Hello, I'm Stephen Robbins. I'm here today with Micha Weinblatt of crookedmonkey.com. Welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Hello.
Hi. All right. So we've known each other since you were barely a college graduate, wet behind the ears. And during that time, you have been a serial entrepreneur. And not only have you been a serial entrepreneur, but the companies that you have founded have themselves pivoted at different times. And you've learned a lot through that. So I would love to have you share whatever knowledge you could as we talk today. But before we begin, I'd like to know a little bit, can you just give people some sense of who you are and 10,000 foot overview of what has your journey been?
Okay. So, Steve, you and I met, I think, when I was maybe 22 or 21, just starting Crooked Monkey. You look the same. I'm 39, so that was 17 years ago. Um, and I remember a lot from our first encounter. But one obviously was that your husband was really big into Burning Man. That was the first time I'd heard about that, and so that
Oh yeah.
started a lifelong of curiosity. Anyways, so my name is Micha. From the Maryland, DC area. I've lived in DC for the last since 2005. I'm actually right now in Jerusalem for 4 months with my family, with my two kids and my wife Miriam. We're trying it out here. I've started two companies and I've had zillions of ideas in between. And both companies have gone through a number of pivots. I think probably all companies go through pivots. It's very rare that the first idea you start with is the last idea. And interestingly enough, my company called Betterific, which I started in between Crooked Monkey. So I had Crooked Monkey, started Betterific, put Crooked Monkey on like autopilot, then came back to Crooked Monkey. We'll talk all about that. But Betterific was an interesting platform of ideas. And it was a platform where we connected brands with consumers to improve products. Personally, I love that's like one of the things that I've always it's just been in my being. When I see something wrong, I correct it. I think it's probably something we learned in my house. Whether my dad would be writing letters to Congress or fixing a light, a traffic light, he would write to his make sure it got fixed, or adding a sidewalk or whatever. Anyway, so Betterific was all about improving products and brands. One of the interesting things about that is that you learn from that company that a lot of non-entrepreneurs believe that the idea is everything. And when I talk to entrepreneurs, I can't tell you the amount of times where they want me to sign an NDA or something. And unless what you're working on is like rocket science, generally the idea is really just the beginning. And the success of your business will be how you pivot through the realities of what the market throws at you.
So before we get too deeply into details into your story, I do have to know, as you were aware, I was poking around on your site. To be completely transparent, I was poking around on the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, to see how your site had evolved over the years. And I encountered just a fascinating screenshot from early in your history where apparently you had something to do with um, the Hilton sisters. Would you like to comment? I'm
Absolutely. This is, I don't know if you're going to show the picture or my,
um,
we'll
I'm
just
not
talk.
I'm
Okay.
not totally sure how, but why don't you talk, and if
I'll,
suddenly.
I'll talk through it. So, Crooked Monkey's original iteration, there it is, was funny T-shirts. So we started in 2005 when actually Paris Hilton was wearing funny T-shirts and Britney Spears was wearing funny T-shirts, and a lot of our shirts were hilarious for the college guy and gal. One of our most famous shirts was this is in 2005 during I think it was the Iraq War, when everyone hated France because I think France didn't join the war effort. And so one of our shirts had a funny line. It said France, like an outline of France, and it said losers of both World Wars One and Two. That was one French shirt we made, and it was so popular. We came out with a second shirt. Paris Hilton was very popular at the time, and we wrote France sucks and Paris swallows. I was at a trade show and found that her sister, Paris Hilton's sister, Nikki Hilton, was going to be there. And so I presented her with this shirt, which looking back is just an absolutely ridiculous scene. But anyways, we presented her the shirt and she thought it was hilarious. And she passed it off to her sister. But there you can see me. I think I'm probably 22 or 23 at the time, showing her, reading her the shirt, which is just hilarious to think of.
Yes, I'm
A lot of
using
hustle, I guess.
the screenshot that doesn't have the actual rest of the text for the just for the sensitive among us.
Good.
So okay, so here you are making shirts. Nikki Hilton's totally on your side. Paris is getting the shirt, writing God knows what about you, through the celebrity gossip back channels. Surely you were poised for tremendous success, and Crooked Monkey became a household name overnight.
So that would be a great story. I think someone once said overnight successes take 10 years or 20 years or whatever it is. So we started to grow a lot in that first iteration, which was we would make funny T-shirts and sell them to retail stores. Neither myself nor my co-founder at the time had any background in fashion or in business, and so we learned really everything on the go. We started using Facebook early on, which I kind of think was really awesome. At that time in Facebook's world, you had to be in a university, and more than that, you couldn't. It wasn't universal. It was by university. So we came up with this idea to make like student groups on campus through Facebook. We were really the first company, I think, to utilize Facebook marketing. And so all of our friends, we would have logins to all of our friends. And so we would make these Crooked Monkey groups on each campus. And we had to like steal people's passwords. Not steal, just use people's passwords. And they would give us their password. We would make these groups. And that's how we started. And we had a website. And then very quickly we realized B2B was much better for us. So selling into retail stores, that was the first early pivot. And just as a fascinating sidebar on that, I think most companies, when they start, try to go B2C, right? The consumer market is always the holy grail. Most end up in the B2B space because it's just a little bit less finicky, I guess. So we started to get, we got into Lord & Taylor and Urban Outfitters, and Ryan Seacrest wore our clothes, and Miley Cyrus wore our clothes, and it was going really well. But at some point we plateaued. And when we plateaued, we were just kind of, I think it was also very hard to build a T-shirt brand at that time because making T-shirts was very easy. And so anyone who had an idea could just make a T-shirt and go to market. And so when we were working with Urban Outfitters, the buyer at Urban Outfitters once told me that his email, this is 15 years ago, his inbox would just have like 10,000 new vendors trying to get in there. And so it just wasn't very, you could see that it wasn't very sustainable. And that's when I launched Betterific, which again was made to connect brands and products over product ideas, which had a lot of success on, I guess, on paper. We worked with Target and General Mills and Hershey, a whole bunch of brands to help them come with new products. We actually launched a couple products, but that I sold that company in 2020, right before the pandemic.
So
The real success. Okay, go ahead.
I want to go back here a little bit. So you were saying Crooked Monkey had plateaued. You had switched
Yes.
to a B2B model. How did you decide to pivot? What are the things you looked at? Because it sounded like there were some long-term considerations, there were some short-term considerations, there was B2B, because I think that's a moment that's very difficult for a lot of entrepreneurs. They have an idea, they've been writing the idea, and they don't know, is the plateau that I've reached due to my own lack of creativity in marketing or my own inability to break through some type of glass ceiling? Or is it that I fundamentally tapped out the market? Or is it that there's just not even going to be more demand for my product category? What was your thinking around that? Because that was a pretty big decision to say, okay, we're plateauing. It's time for me to shift, to put this on autopilot and shift to a completely different business.
Great question. It was so long ago, but I think probably the plateau, how do you know that it's plateauing and that it's not as a result of your efforts? I think at that point, what I realized is that the market was getting saturated. It was getting harder and harder for us to build a brand. And if you can't build a brand, I think just in general, by the way, if you can't build a brand in whatever you're building, it's going to be very hard to grow. And building a brand means that people have to know what you stand for. They have to know why you're special. And obviously Simon Sinek talks about, the why, but it really has to be something that separates you from the competition. And at that point, what we thought was our brand prop or value prop was no longer relevant 5 years in because everyone could make T-shirts and it wasn't resonating as much in the market. Our brand prop,
What would you have
if that
said your
helps.
brand was? Your brand prop was originally.
It was funny. I mean, I remember it was funny shirts that you could wear to the bar.
Got it. Okay, and that
That was the
becomes
original idea. Yep.
very, very indefensible when suddenly anyone can make a funny shirt that you can wear to the bar.
So then we started to add design elements to it. So we started, I mean, I can go through all the iterations. So first it was just like text. Then we realized anyone could do that. And so we added design. And then we actually moved away from funny t-shirts and just to straight design. What we found was just difficult was that it was still too easy. Any graphic designer could get into it. And so the value prop was not really there for the stores. Also, we were so reliant on the retailers. And so in the first, I don't want to say the first, but in 2008 with the financial meltdown, all of our customers went out of business overnight because we sold to a lot of boutique stores. And so we had to think long. That was like the initial pivot of Crooked Monkey, I would say, where you moved away from just funny t-shirts and into just like graphic design, graphic t-shirts. And that worked out really well, actually. And we only worked with retail department stores because boutiques went out of business literally overnight.
Yep.
And so that worked for a while again until it wasn't sticky enough, I guess. And you could just feel it plateauing. You know, you could feel that the buyers that we were working with would just be like they weren't looking at the brand, they were looking at our product. Very different. So, for instance, when we would go to Urban Outfitters, they weren't saying, "What is Crooked Monkey offering?" They would say, "Let me see your t-shirts." It's
Got
very
it.
hard to sell that, and that's what I'm talking about with a brand, right? So, like, we hadn't, for whatever reason, we hadn't clicked on the even the buyers understanding what our brand was.
Okay. Now, do you think that was due? Do you think that was due to you not doing a good job of articulating the brand, or of the brand becoming less defensible? I mean, I keep thinking about "Life is Good." You know, the whole "Life
Yep.
is Good," which started with like just one simple graphic and just the words "Life is Good," and boy, did they milk that, you know, for a lot. And I have no idea, honestly, if that was purchased because of the brand or because of the specific like I as somebody who has not ever been in fashion, I don't know how to disentangle those two things.
They were very early, and I think everyone used them as the model. It started to get easier to do what they did, and then it was impossible to replicate what they did.
Yeah, like that million
Um,
pixel guy. Remember the guy who had
oh,
he
they
had
made the
a web
ad?
page,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you could buy pixels for $1 a
for a
piece, and he made
dollar. Yep,
$1 million, and all of a sudden the next week there were all these million pixels, but it works once.
that's exactly right. That's funny. Um, so it plateaued, and but by the way, while that was plateauing, we started to sell to restaurants. Restaurants started to find out what we were doing, and they loved our designs. And restaurants started to say, "Hey, can you design our T-shirts?" And slowly but surely, that started to be a big part of our business. But I didn't accept that. Um, One of the things I think that's really hard about being an entrepreneur is you have to know when to be headstrong and when to be, I don't know if humble is the right word. You should always be humble, but when to be headstrong and when to just say, am I doing the right thing? Um, just pause and think. And so those orders started to come in. And at the beginning, I was kind of prideful of what we had built with Cricket Monkey. And I liked the idea that we were a brand, even though now looking back, I don't think we were much of a brand, but that we were selling our own product. And although these customers started to come and become more and more regular and actually rely on us more and more, it took me a while till I understood that that was where the market was for us.
So the market then, when you say that, you mean doing designs for other people, not producing your own brand.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
So then you hit 2020 and you decided, or sorry, 2020 was when you got
Sold
into
Betterific.
Betterific. Yeah. How did
So
Betterific?
2014, I'll give you the quick story on Betterific. 2012, I'm making my fitted bed sheets, and I'm sitting there struggling to figure out which one side is length and which side is width. I don't know if you ever put your uh, bed sheets on, but it's an amorphous sheet. And I realized that if the manufacturer just put a label length and width, it would make that whole thing much easier, and you wouldn't have to jump all around it. And so from that original idea, we started Betterific as really kind of the internet suggestion box was the original idea. Um, and we went through an accelerator program called Dream It in Philly, and really built out that product, and very quickly pivoted to B2B in that as well, where we would sell innovation challenges to brands. And we had an audience of about 20,000, and we would run these innovation challenges, which was just a lot of fun and super creative. And I personally enjoyed running these challenges. For instance, how would you make cabinets more accessible? So like the stuff that's at the top is easier to get to.
God, yeah.
How
I'm a
would you
short
make
person,
products
and
that,
my partner is a very tall person. So he puts things in this place that I think is just being made up. He puts things on top of, and I'm like, there is no such thing. I can look, I can see, there is no on top of there. All I see is the edge of the shelf, and then presumably we have empty space up there on that top shelf because that lets the air breathe. And he keeps claiming there is an on top of, and there are things that are on top of that top shelf. And I'm like, no, there aren't. So
so if
I'm
you
very
had ideas, you could have won these innovation challenges.
dang. All right. So you shifted to innovation challenges, which sound like a
It was
lot of fun.
crowdsourced innovation is really what it was. Um, and we learned a lot in that. So one of the ones at Target, which was a great one, was uh, what products do you, I'll just give you a couple of fun ones. What products would you want to make for the dorm room? And so the three of my most favorite, and Target actually ended up making five of the products, which was like an absolute highlight at Betterific. Um, a mini fridge that has a fake wall, so you can hide stuff from your roommate and from the RA or from the whatever. An inflatable rug, so it's a rug by day and a mattress by night for your friends.
Oh, cool.
And one of the ones that they actually made, which is brilliant, is just like a fitted bed sheet with a pocket, so you can put your glasses and your phone right in there, so you don't need all the other stuff.
Wow. All right.
So
So
yeah,
why was that not the next great American success story?
um, I think great question. I think brands, companies or CPG companies, um, are so focused on inefficiencies and the stuff that they already make, they don't want to come up with new ideas. Is the number first side the one. They don't want to produce new things. And so basically, if you think of a company, generally their innovations, unless you're Tesla or Google, are around how to make something move a little bit faster, uh, save a little plastic, make it take 10 days instead of 12 days. They're not really coming up with like uh, innovations, is one area. Um, and I should have heard that a lot earlier when we were talking to customers. And the second is it's also very hard to come up with SpaceX, right? Unless you're Elon Musk. And
Right.
so there's like both of those things I think are why. And so we started to work with more in market research, I think is where we ended up, in market research and innovation, kind of that area. Um, but I mean, we did well enough that we ended up selling it in January of 2020, right before the pandemic. But not it was not obviously um, the innovation challenges. It was a niche market than we
Yeah.
expected originally.
So 2020, you sold it. You decided to reconcentrate on Crooked Monkey. 2 months, 2 to 3 months before the world went into lockdown with a global pandemic.
I'll give a couple fascinating stories, not on the pandemic yet, but on Betterific. A lot of what we learned at Betterific, I then applied to Crooked Monkey. And so I think part of number one, like my right hand guy now, our director of revenue, interned for me at Betterific. And I found a way to bring him into Crooked Monkey. And with him, we've really grown Crooked Monkey. Um, we learned how to do cold emailing, to be honest, on a scale that is we don't do it anymore, but it was an amazing scale. At Betterific, for instance, we had meetings with CMOs of I don't know, at least 10 of the Fortune 500. We were able to get meetings of GE,
Wow.
ConAgra, just through cold emails. Our cold emailing system and our emails were so good. We brought that to Crooked Monkey, and that really helped propel it in the beginning. I don't think cold emails work as well anymore. because it's just inundated. But there was, and then just kind of how we built, how we thought a little bit more about product market fit and all that helped tremendously for Crooked Monkey. So all that was the building blocks for Crooked Monkey 2.0, which now at this point is a merch agency where we work with brands to produce their swag, and it's a lot more than that. We do design, we do logistics, we do warehousing, kitting, fulfillment, custom sourcing abroad, all that.
And you're all
I
B2B
started
at this point.
all B2B, all B2B. We don't sell any more of our own funny T-shirts.
Ah, all right. Anyway, you were saying.
So in 2019 and 18, I started to focus much more on Crooked Monkey, and it started to grow. And then in 2020, I realized that Crooked Monkey was the main driver of growth, and that's where I wanted to be. And so I was able to sell Betterific to a competitor who was also a mentor as well. And we were growing Crooked Monkey. I think at that point, about the first about 200% a year from 2016 till 2020. And obviously, I don't know how much you want to get into the pandemic, but March 10th of 2020, maybe March 14th of 2020, the emails come to a screeching halt. And at that point, you have to pivot. And that was a fascinating. I mean, I think every entrepreneur, every human has interesting stories from March of 2020. I think business owners also have a unique perspective. Or I think Brian Chesky from Airbnb said at that time that every day he did a year's worth of decisions, which is, if you think about it back then, that's literally what it was. It was the data was changing every minute, and it was crazy. But our emails came to a screeching halt. All of our customers were in the event space. If you think about T-shirts, generally it's driven by events. It's driven by events. It's driven by offsites. It's driven by a whole bunch of things that just don't exist anymore.
Yep.
And so in
there
March,
you were.
there we are. And at that point, the team doesn't yet realize how monumental this is about to be, right? So the team at that point is still kind of going through the flow, and like we're trying to be, but I'm on overdrive, realizing that 0 emails means no revenue, means that's it. And
Now,
so
when
I
you say
start
0
coming
emails, you mean 0 incoming emails.
incoming. Sorry, that's what I mean. Yes, incoming email. Our company is very much heavy on emails because we work so closely with clients. It's a lot of emails. We don't do a lot of online, or all of our systems are online, but most of our connection with clients is phone, email, all that.
Yep.
So it comes to a screeching halt. And so I'm just grasping for straws for ideas. One of the ideas we came up with is actually now our business. It didn't really work the first week because the world wasn't ready for new ideas. But in any event, one of the fascinating things is that we started to see there was a need for masks. And I think one of your questions, how do you know what to pivot? When do you pivot? And all those questions. What we talk about when we look back with my team on why we were able to be so successful during COVID, which obviously is a weird thing to say, but our team was super adaptable. We were small. Now we're 24. We were 6 or 7 people at the time. We were super, super adaptable, and we weren't stuck in our ways. But more than that, part of our value as a company is to always say yes to the customer. And so what that did, without us realizing it at the time, was push the boundaries of what a company in our space usually does. The space that we're in, we're a merch agency, but most people are a promo company. And when you're a promo company, it's there's a set number of vendors or manufacturers that you work with, and it's pretty cut and dry. In order to rise above and to really add our special touch, which is kind of a retail touch, and add more premium space and design, we always are pushing the envelope of what's possible. And what that allowed us to do is to connect with manufacturers abroad to do full custom stuff. And so we're not just printing a T-shirt, but we can also do an all-over print hoodie. We can custom design socks and shoes and hats and all that. So we had built really great relationships abroad. So we start to see people can't bring stuff into America. People can't bring masks and PPE into the States. we had built really, really great relationships with our factories abroad, and I started to reach out to them March 15th. I start to see emails that that they have masks. And so I'm not going to go through the whole story, but anyways, it was an absolute nightmare. It was the hardest thing of our lives, but we started to work with our manufacturers and our who we had built really good relationships with, who we trusted dearly to bring masks into the country, and we supplied them to nursing homes.
And so when you say
Um,
you trusted, you mean you trusted the quality of what they were producing and their ability to actually bring in like a good N95 or whatever. Because I remember at the time there were a lot of counterfeits floating around, a lot of people opportunistically taking advantage of the sudden need for PPE.
uh, that is exactly what it is. And we were so afraid. At one point, my father-in-law is a doctor, and so I was showing him the masks to try and ask him the difference because I had to become a mask expert. Now everyone's a mask expert. I had to become mask expert March 20th overnight, and we're selling a nursing home, so masks matter, right? It's not like you're going into a supermarket. Um, and he stopped me and said, "I can help you figure out these masks, but Micho, there's a whole industry about with masks, and why do you think you can bring in masks in this country and nobody else can?" And at that point, it wasn't nobody. Obviously, there were other people bringing in that early as well. But and I said, Doc, I wish I had the luxury of being able to answer that question, but right now I don't have a company, and so this is where our company is, and we're just gonna try to do it.
Yep.
Um, it was that kind of black and white at that point. Um, and I mean, a lot of funny stories about that. A, our name is Crooked Monkey, and we're trying to sell to nursing homes PPE. Um, and you don't, and there's all this fraud going on. And I'm calling, hey, and we're calling, and I'm saying, hey, I'm Crooked Monkey, and they're like, you're what? And then it's like, we started to land everything, and we still have really good relationships with all of the nursing homes that we work with, and they're so thankful for us being able to land everything. We tried to just be as honest as possible, but it was an absolute nightmare in those first weeks. You didn't know what was coming in. What was anyway? That was a giant pivot, and from March until August, that was our whole company was
It was PPE.
PPE bringing masks in from Mexico, and we had to open up relationships in Vietnam and Mexico and China. I mean, I could talk all about that, but anyways,
So is that what you're still doing?
we no longer do any PPE. Not at all. The supply chain has worked itself out. We're not needed over there. Now what we do is the first idea that we came up with in March of 2020 was kits to people's homes. Our idea at the time was your employees aren't working at home, send them like a wellness kit. And We came with this idea in March. Again, actually on that same thing, we had come up with how to warehouse and fulfill um, way before the pandemic, which now it's our whole business is warehousing and fulfillment, because one of our customers wanted us to mail things to people's homes, and so we had to solve the problem, right? And so we had already solved the problem beforehand, and it's a logistical nightmare getting sourcing all these goods and getting to people's homes on time. But we had started that again before the pandemic, and so we were ready when the pandemic happened. There's a funny story when I was we sold one kit in March. Now we that's our whole business. So we sell a lot more than one kit. We sold one kit in March, um, and I went to Lowe's to go get. We sold it was like a coffee mug, coffee, and a succulent. And I went to Lowe's to go buy 100 succulents that we could ship. And I have pictures of me and my kid like packing all the boxes and everything. Anyways.
So you now do wellness kits. So everyone who's doing back to office and trying for this hybrid work from home, you should do something. There's got to be some way to get all the people who are returning to the office
There's
to buy a kit, and all the people who are working from home to buy a kit.
I think the interesting thing with work from home has been that there have been ways to, and by the way, my team is fully remote. So we've always been remote, and swag is a big thing for us, obviously. But uh, that how do you maintain culture in a remote environment? And one of the ways has been swag, right? One of the ways that you can make people feel like they're part of the team is that we're all wearing the same thing, and then our job is to elevate it. And so it's not just a t-shirt, but it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more thought out. Um, but that I think that's been a big driver of our growth was the pivot and just a general the work from home has been. I guess swag has eaten a little of the office space budget.
Cool. Well, I'm sitting here thinking, who's even heard from Paris Hilton for the last decade? If only she had swag boxes that were going out and keeping her relevant. But um, uh, her loss that she didn't stay in contact with you. Um, so okay, so now I'm afraid we're actually at our time. But if people are interested in taking a look at the products that you've done, if whoever's watching this, if you have a team and you want your team to have some swag bags and boxes and use this as a cohesive cultural force, where can they find you?
Crookedmonkey.com.
That's easy. It's also super easy to spell, and the imagery is imagery. So, thank you very, very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it, and I hope that we can talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Steve. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Pivot to success.